All right, I think we should get started. All the folks that are in the back, since you have been standing for long, the first row is all yours. Please come. Please show some love for our speaker. And don't be scared. You're not standing in front, you're sitting in front. Please come forward. There are too many folks at the back. There are too many empty chairs. It scares the speaker, so please come. There's still a lot of food left, so if you want to grab some more, do that. If you want to do that towards the end, take some home. We're definitely expecting a lot more people to show up, but things happen. There are drinks in the back. So starting off with our official agenda. First thing first, thank you Sauce Labs for sponsoring food. Thank you GoDaddy for hosting and providing drinks. We have another meetup happening this month because there's a special guest who is visiting from India, and he wanted to give a presentation, and that was the only time that would have worked for him. So we have another one in this month, which is I think on June 28th. It's most likely going to be in a different location. We got a couple of other hosts who are interested in hosting. So it would most likely be at Intuit. We are still finalizing the logistics for that, but it's going to be in Mountain View, their office in Mountain View. So watch out for an announcement for that. Hopefully by tomorrow we should be able to finalize that. Other than that, there is another presentation we're going to have in July. So still finalizing some logistics around hosts and food and stuff. So a lot of action happening during this summer. A lot of folks are stepping up to talk about different things that they have done. And we are always looking for speakers. So if you have any idea, anything, any cool work that you have done at your job or on your side, please talk to me, and we would definitely like to get you scheduled. Any other announcements from anybody? Anybody looking for QA engineers, SDATs, any announcements they want to make that are relevant to this meetup? Ryan, this entire row is still empty. That desk is not supposed to be for folks sitting there. Please be a sport. Come forward. Thank you, guys. Thank you. If there are no other announcements, we will get started. So today we have Fernando. He has done a lot of cool work, and I would say he's a very good subject matter expert on UI automation using Selenium. A lot of good learnings we're gonna see from him today. One interesting thing that he told me about was he tried several different things. So he tried horseback riding, he tried soccer, baseball, and he failed at everything. And then the only thing that he works and he really excels is software. So with that, I'm definitely looking forward to this talk about augmented driver and learnings from his experience on doing automation at scale. Thank you.
Okay. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. And also I want to thank Manoj for organizing, and also GoDaddy for the space, and I guess Sauce Labs for the pizza. So why I'm here? I'm here to talk about UI automation at scale. I was lucky enough to be part of it and help and learn at Google when I first got my first job. And then also I was the main contributor on 3 other companies that I joined since then. To give you a little bit of an idea of why I'm here, besides that I'm not good at sports, and it was baseball, it was basketball, not baseball. So I started working at Google sometime in 2006. WebDriver became like kind of a thing sometime in 2007. So I was lucky enough to be part of the project that migrated from the old framework that I was trying to remember yesterday. It was either HTTP unit or JWeb unit or one something unit into WebDriver. And also I was lucky enough to be part of the team that migrated from our internal infrastructure, like project level ad hoc, into like the big machine that is Google testing infrastructure. Then I joined Medallia in 2010. It was a startup back then. Now it's like 1,000 people or something like that. I was super excited. It was the first time that I was going to build something from the ground up. So there were a couple of things that for some reasons were like not working great at checkout at the project that I was at Google. So I was going to build something from scratch, and I paid like a lot of attention, like I'm not going to make these mistakes. And I focused a lot on that, and like I can gladly say that I didn't make those mistakes, but I made many, many others. Which I learned, so bad for Medallia, good for me. Later, like around 2 years ago, I joined RelateIQ, now it's Salesforce IQ. And again, I was going like a small team and having to build something from the ground up. So my first project was doing web automation. I wanted to do something that it was close to my main users that were going to be front-end developers. So I jumped into JavaScript, that is not my main language. I did things on Jasmine and Protector, it was at that time the official framework for WebDriver on Angular. So I spent a couple of months there. It was building, it was working, it was great, it was good, not awesome. And then after that, my second project was doing Android automation. I went back to my main language, that is Java. I did some research, I started working with Appium, I was very happy with it. I finished that, and then the next project it was going to be iOS. I was already maintaining 2 frameworks. I didn't want to maintain another one, especially in a language that I didn't know at all, that is Objective-C. So I did some research. Appium also works for iOS. So a lot of the code that I use on Android, I like put it all together and make like a common core where I had like automation both on iOS and Android. And that was like the birth or the first version of Augmented Driver, a tool that I open sourced it. At that point, I called it like mobile something. I'm not very good at names. And after a while, I was having 2 frameworks, one for iOS and Android, that I was quite happy with it because it was Java, and with JavaScript you have promises and all that I'm not very familiar with. So at one point I moved everything to all the web to this mobile driver, Augmented Driver. When I left RelateIQ, Salesforce IQ, yes?
I have one question for you.
Yes, please, anybody can ask.
So how much did you pay the marketing guy who came up with that name?
Which one, Augmented Driver?
Yeah.
It was by myself, so like I came up with it. I can't remember exactly how, but at one point it was enhanced driver, enhanced mobile driver, this driver, and I moved to another repo that it was still private. And like at one point, like I didn't want to have any clash names, so I thought of augmented, and then I put it there.
Cool.
Good question. After a while, I was quite happy of what I've done, and I open sourced it. And when I left Salesforce IQ, that framework was running web, Android, and iOS. It was running at a rate of more than 80,000 tests per month, and thanks to Sauce Labs. And it was running around 300 tests in less than 15 minutes. So it was like at a reasonable scale. And finally, 2 months ago, I joined Split.io. It's a small startup. I'm a dev tools at heart. UI automation is just one of the things that I do, and my passion is about getting code, shipping code from the users, from the developers to the users as fast as I can and with the best customer experience that I can. So that's what I do. And Split.io is in that business. We are trying to provide a solution. If you ever heard of like move fast and break things, we are trying to provide a solution which lets you move faster and hopefully break these things. If you are curious about it, just ask me later. Then, right now, let's go directly to the lessons that I've learned. So basically, I have six lessons. I try to divide them in 6 lessons that I've learned through all my 8 or 9 years of experience. And the first one is, as everybody knows, WebDriver tests are inherently slow. So if you're using Sauce Labs and you ask for like a Chrome or like a Firefox, you might get your VM in 15, 30 seconds. If you ask for an Android or iOS, you might get it in a minute. And then you usually you log in, you do some things, some clicks, you wait for some business logic to show up, and eventually the test ends. So we are talking about something that it's around in the order of a minute compared to the order of microseconds or milliseconds that a unit test, a traditional unit test takes. So in this world now of continuous integration, of getting quick results, of iterating quickly, you need fast results, you need throughput, and if you want throughput, you have to run your test in parallel. So, and that's the reason why, leading us to the first lesson of the saga, which is basically the power of data-independent tests. That's something that I learned like at Google during the migration from our own internal infrastructure to Google infrastructure. What you have to do, or like it's a good idea if each test at the very beginning creates the data that it's going to use, that is not going to share with any other test, and it's not dependent on any other test that ran before, and it's not going to mess up with any test in the future. If you get that, there's no reason why all your tests can run in parallel. So that's the first lesson. So I come from a Java world, and I come from, right now in the last 3 companies, a REST API based company. So the first time when I joined RelateIQ and when I joined Split, the first thing that I do, like literally, like in the first week, I created a test resource that is basically a REST endpoint that it has two endpoints, a resource that has 2 endpoints, one that will create the data and the other one that will clean the data. They are not allowed to run in prod because this could be dangerous. So, and then if you're familiar with JUnit and JUnit rules, let's see if this works. Yeah, kind of. So this will call the first endpoint that will create the data. That endpoint will like create the user with the password and organization and some other elements of your software. Like at RelateIQ, it was like an organization and an account and a list and so forth. Then this statement.evaluate is actually runs the test. If there's no exception, if the test doesn't fail, then you will clean it. If it fails, you will skip the clean, because what I like is once the test fails, I can log in with the credentials that the test had and figure out what's going on. And finally, in some base test class, you just annotate the rule, and that's all you need. It uses composition, and I'm really fond of like test rules. I know in JUnit 5 they are getting rid of test rules, so we'll see what happens then. So this is just JUnit. If you're using TestNG, you have like before method and after method. In JUnit less than 4, you have like the before each and after each in Jasmine, setup and tear down in Python. The important thing is at the very first, your test creates some data, the test run, and at the end, the test cleans itself. So let's see how this goes. Episode 1. So I have the rule that basically at the beginning it will call create, that this is a mock client that it only like prints creating data. Then it runs the test, and then it cleans the data. So if we run the test, you will see that, can you guys see? Yeah. So you see that it will create the test data, it will run some tests that right now it doesn't matter, it goes to Wikipedia and then make sure that the input is there, and then it gets the data. So that's the lesson number 1. Let's go here. So, hello? Yes. So now we have, we can run our tests in parallel, we have throughput. Now that it's not useful unless the tests are reliable. So with that in mind, you need to make your test as reliable as possible in all possible environments. So just because your test runs fine in your local environment doesn't mean that it will run fine when you run it against your staging or testing environment, and it doesn't mean that when you ship it to Sauce Labs it will run okay. So that leads us to the second lesson, which is slow and steady wins the race. So basically, most of the random failures, or yeah, let's call it random failures of WebDriver, is when you try to click on an element and the element is not there, or it's not enabled, or this or that. So usually, in general, is when the element has an unexpected transient state when the action is being performed. So how to avoid that? So let's say that this is a usual test case that it's. So basically at the beginning you just wait for 3 seconds, hoping for the best, you get the element and then you click it. What happens if the element was not there after 3 seconds? It fails. What happened, it was there but it was not enabled yet? It fails. What happens if the element was part of an animation that was like moving through the page and you try to click it while it was moving? It also fails. So WebDriver has this idea, this notion of explicit and implicit waits. Basically, you will declare a wait that is 10 seconds, and then you expect until the condition to be clickable of the identifier, and eventually you click it. This is good. This prevents from like random failures. But what I've seen the problem with here is like it's very ad hoc. So when you can always know these rules, but when developers start developing your test, where you're starting to do it at scale, like hundreds of tests, then they send you the pull request and you say like, hey, you forgot to wait here for this element, so it might fail. And they say like, no, but like in this test at the very beginning, I already waited for this other thing, so I'm sure that the page is there, so I can click it and it's going to be more efficient. And it only takes like 1% of your tests on a suite is flaky and it will fail randomly. When there are 10 tests, it doesn't matter. But once you get to 100 tests, you're almost sure that one test is going to fail randomly every time you run. And if your suite is always red for random failure, like nobody pays attention to it, especially if you're trying to do continuous integration. How did I solve that with Augmented WebDriver? With Augmented Driver. So basically, you don't have WebDriver anymore. You have Augmented WebDriver that internally is the same as the WebDriver. It has like the find element, the navigate, the manage, everything is the same. But it also exposes something that is called Augmented, that is a set of functionality that helps you with creating tests. For example, you have find element clickable. So this, like there's some configuration that you say like, hey, wait at least for 30 seconds. So find element clickable, we start with not continue until it finds that element, it's present, is enabled, and is clickable. And eventually it returns it, and you can click it. More things, like you can wait for the element to be visible. You can wait for several find elements to be visible. You can get the first element and then call augmented on that element. So this will find of all the elements that are visible by ID, we'll get the first one, and then inside that element we'll find ID2 and then click it. And for iOS and Android, like you have some other handy functionality. For example, like usually most of the thing is you tap on something and then you type some input. So you have click and send keys, you have swipe down in an ID, swipe down in an element until another element is visible that is handy on like the menus and so forth.
So one question for
yes.
that. So did you actually end up creating wrapper functions for all possible APIs for Selenium in this case? So there's always find element versus find elements.
Yes.
And then find element by ID, then find elements by ID,
Yes.
and so on and so forth. So did you end up creating wrapper functions for each one of them?
So yes, you have not for everything that can possibly do, but usually what I did at RelateIQ is like, if some functionality I needed like for several tests or for several things, I would just wrap it up and put it on Augmented. And in that way I ended up with, for example, find element clickable, find elements clickable, find element visible, and so forth. Same for iOS. Like after the 11th time that I have to tap and send keys, you can use the actions, but I would say like, hey, I will just wrap it all together and put it in one. So
these are essentially helper functions.
yes, they are helper functions, like trying to make your test more lean and more reliable. Yeah, good question. Yes.
Sometimes Firefox behave when element is not shown right away on the page, but
Yeah.
the page shows, it will, even if it's loaded later on, it will not set the flag in display to it's there. So in my experience, what happened when it came to the page and element is not loaded right away, it's take time to load, like 11 seconds, it will fail, test will fail, but element is present. So how you avoid this? Because we can wait forever.
Right now at Speed, I only run things on, because I've been for only 2 months, I only run things on Chrome. But at RelateIQ, we were running things on Chrome and Firefox, and I think Safari. And we never experienced that.
So I can actually answer
Yeah.
that specific question. That's usually because if there are mismatched WebDriver versions with the Firefox version. So, you know, in a lot of cases, WebDriver actually has drivers for each of the browsers. And if there are core functionality that they change and release in the browser itself, then you see a lot of timeout issues. So I am 99.9% sure it is because of that. So if you upgrade the WebDriver version, corresponding to what version of Firefox you're using, you're probably not going to run into that issue.
Most of the times when Firefox releases a new version, WebDriver is not catching up. Let's say. So what's the solution in this case? Let's say your manager is, or whoever is telling me, no, I want a new driver. I new Firefox included as well. Go test it.
So simple answer is there is no SLA in open source. So if you run into issues, you run into issues, you create an issue, and then you look at it and fix it. It has gone a lot more better than it was probably 3 years ago. So Firefox maintains the WebDriver, the driver in the WebDriver for Firefox. So they have a suite of tasks that they run before they release the browser. So they use WebDriver to actually run their tasks. So it is safe to assume that they will find these kind of issues in most cases as they have evolved a lot. So it does still happen that something would escape through, but it has definitely gone a lot better than it was before.
To add what Manoj said, like Firefox, Chrome, there are like the Chrome team and the Firefox team are maintaining that. And in my opinion, like Sauce Labs also does a pretty good job on keeping all the Firefox, and like I've only tried Firefox and Chrome. So in that sense, I haven't had many issues of that time.
It's their bread and butter. So
yeah.
When you ask for capabilities like, hey, I want to run this version of Chrome, they're going to serve you a VM that has the appropriate matching version of Selenium on it.
So I found some issues with iOS because iOS are like really like for the app, like they are really good at breaking pretty much everything when they release. But they like at least I'm quite happy with SoftLab. They've been quite responsive. And like I really stopped trying to maintain my own Selenium farm or my own thing. It's just give money to Sauce Labs or like Browser Stack or whatever, and just don't even think about it.
And good thing is at WWDC they recently announced that Apple is now going to start maintaining Safari driver as well. Previously, it was just maintained by folks outside. So that would definitely help with test if you're running on Safari or on version.
How about to verify the jQuery? So you make a call, the jQuery, for example, Ajax. Your front-end developer is using jQuery library. As soon as it returns true, that means that all the calls are done. So all the elements should be on a page.
Yeah.
So before starting the test, you can create a function that will tell, oh, okay, Ajax is true. Go ahead and just verify all the elements.
Yeah, that's a good approach. What I found with that, it tends to be more effective because you can look at that query and say like, hey, everything's done. But in nowadays, where like you have one page applications, and even if the page says like, hey, it's done, you never know if like a new ad is going to pop up. You never know like if you click on something and like that adds something to the list. There's no way the page will tell you like, hey, like no, just wait, something else is happening. So in my opinion, it's much more reliable to do this try and error to say like, hey, wait for the element. The element is there? No, okay, just wait half a second. Try again, the element is there? No. Try again, the element is there? No.
To also add to your point, if you are a JavaScript developer, you could always come up with a jQuery or a JavaScript that would get you the element in the state you want, and you can execute that jQuery, but there is no way for you to get a callback unless you're using JavaScript for your code. So you can, from a WebDriver perspective, you can just say execute JS, and it's going to execute the JS, but there's no way for you to know when it is actually done. So the callback would actually give you true that it is ready, but there's no way for you to tell your code, unless it is written in JavaScript itself, to say, oh, that Ajax has been completed already. But there, if, as he was saying, a lot of folks would use jQuery to ensure that a particular element is in a state, but that is a lot hackish, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, please.
At what point it will throw an error message? At what point it will throw an error message if the element never uploads?
Good question. That find element visible, for example, you have two flavors. You have find element visible after, that besides the ID, you give like wait 30 seconds, wait 20 seconds, wait whatever you want. But find element visible by ID, there's a properties file that I'm going to explain later that you say like wait time in seconds, like 30. So all the find element visible, find element clickable, or pretty much any other method that waits, it will wait for that default period.
So, but here it's not mentioning how much time it should wait, right?
Yeah, that's on the configuration file. I think like by default it's 30 seconds. But you can go to the configuration style file and say like 90 seconds or 3 seconds. For this test, because for these examples, since I don't want to wait for 30 seconds, I put the timeout in like 3 seconds or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions? Good question. Very good. So let's see how this goes. So for episode 2, so here is the augmented way. So first it will go to Wikipedia, then it will wait until the search input is there, and then it will assert there is no more. So this basically, if we do this and it's not compiling, what did I do wrong? So, let's see. So it goes to the Wikipedia. Since the element is there, it will find it automatically and then it will finish. But let's say, for example, that I search for this. So this guy will start waiting up to 3 seconds because I said it. It cannot find it, and then it will fail, saying like, "Hey, like timed out after 5 seconds, and this thing didn't show up. Let's go. Any questions? Good. So let's go to the third. So now you have throughput. You can run your test in parallel. Now each test is reliable because like a lot of the flakiness have been reduced. Now what you want is your suite to be maintainable and reusable. Why this? Because now we in continuous integration, when something breaks, you are the bottleneck, and you want to make sure that when something changes, when something breaks, you want to update it as fast as I can, so you can keep everything green and running. So everybody out there is talking about this. This is not something that I came up with, but you have to follow the page object model. So for this is now what you want is to encapsulate the business logic of your application into different UI components that know how to do that. So when something, and especially they reuse the buys, because if you start using buys on your different tests, when something changes, you have to go through all your tests and change them. I've seen a lot of frameworks that follow the page object model. I saw one interesting that I couldn't find it yesterday, that it was like you define your class, and then with an annotation you specify the ID of the XPath on a private field or on a public field, and then the framework itself will, with that annotation, will try to find an annotation expert will try to find it for you. I did something a lot more simpler. So basically, a page object is something that you extend from web page object, that is like the page object as a whole. And if you want to model something that is a container or a part of your page, you can extend web page container object. But I'm just going to stay with web page object. And when you say it's like, okay, I have the main page. In this case, it's going to be the main wiki page, and the page is loaded only until this visible by is there. So only until the search input is there, then when I get there, the page is there. So then on the base cases, I have like a method that goes to the main page and say like, hey, go to Wikipedia and return get main page. This get will instantiate the main page object, and then wait until this search input is there. If it's not there, it's going to time out as any other thing. If you want to define a more complex situation when your page is there, you can override another method, not just visible by. But in my experience, at relate IQ and at split, as long as you just use the visible by, it's good enough. Let's go to episode 3 here. So the base case, as you can see, it has the main page method that it will go to Wikipedia and then get the main page. And the main page has this visible by, just wait until the input is there. You can search, so basically you do augmented, find element clickable, the input, and then send key search. So your test, now you can see how your test, like on the other episodes, you can see like you were using driver get page and then expecting for a buy. Here you can see with modeling your business logic, you can see how this starts becoming more agnostic and it starts becoming more independent of your application, and it's more like readable. So here from the test you can see that, hey, first you go to the main page and then you search for web driver. So if we debug this, this main page will go to this guy and wait until the input is there, and then this search will basically search for Selenium. So let's see, let's finish this, and let's say that go to thing, but start waiting, the visible by will say like, hey, wait for the input, but the input is path defined it, and in this case it's going to fail. With the error like, hey, like this element was not visible. By blah is not visible after 5 seconds. So here, this is key for doing things at scale. Stop like on your test defining bys and defining conditions and more using like web page objects, so now different tests can share the same code. And it's a lot easier when something changes, it's a lot easier to adapt because everything is just in one page object. And you can see like I usually have like a class of bys where like I only define the bys there, so everybody else is using that class. Now you can run your test in parallel, so you have throughput. You can wait until the elements are on a desired state, so you have reliability. You can encapsulate your framework on business logic, so now you have maintainability and reusability. So in that way, whenever something changes, you can quickly update and you can create tests more efficient. But the next level is related to the second step, but it's more on waiting for some business logic to appear. So for example, if you have a list, if your application have a list and you add something, you create a new item, you expect the list to have like a +1 element. Or if you change the name of your organization, you expect that like on the top right, like the organization have the new name. And if you are on like on a checkout page and you add something to your cart, you expect that to the total amount to be updated. You no longer are like waiting for like WebDriver, web elements to happen, but now your test demand that you are waiting for some business logic to appear. And then is crusade against arbitrary ways. Like honestly, at first I was doing something else, but I really like the picture, so I leave it like that. I left it like that. So basically, this is an extension of episode 2, but a much higher level. Like you no longer like when you add something to your list, you don't longer wait for like 5 seconds and hope for the best that the element is added. So you use the notion of waiters, that you wait until a condition is fulfilled. And like if you've been developing on page objects, now you can define this business logic on the page object and use a waiter to start querying and say like, hey, like, is this fulfilled? No, okay, wait 5 seconds or 2 seconds. Let's try again. So far. So for example, for the main page, that it's on the, let's say on the wiki, you have like number of suggestions, so you look for the elements visible, the size, and like on Wikipedia, like whenever you input something, it will appear like one suggestion will appear for each suggestion. So in that way, you can do like wait until you send the page object and wait until the number of suggestions is greater than 3. So let's go. As the other ones, main page goes to Wikipedia. Then you have the main page that, as before, you have like the search, and then you have like the new condition, like number of suggestion, and then something that selects the element suggestion. So in your test, what you have is you go to the main page, you search for something, and then you wait until at least like 3 of them show up. You select the first one, and then this will give you wiki page. That wiki page gives you an idea of how to get the name. So if you go to here, assert that is the same as as waiter, you will assert until the get name of the page is Selenium software. So in that way, you are no longer using JUnit asserts or like common asserts because maybe the page is already not loaded. And if you use traditional asserts, that will fail. In this way, you will start querying until the get name is equal to Selenium software. So if we debug it, it goes to the main page, it search, it will wait until 3 of them show up. There are 5. It will go to the first one, and then it will assert until Selenium software is the main page. And that's like, let's see if like more than 20 should show up, that only 5 show up. Only 5 or 6 show up, so it will keep waiting, and then it will fail. And let's go back to here, and let's say that actually it's not redirecting you to the right page. So if you do this, we'll search, we'll say 5, and then what happened? Oh. It will fail because like it was expecting Selenium something, and I changed. So here again, your tests start becoming more like human readable. You are not using bytes, you're encapsulating everything. So at one point, creating new tests are like a lot easier, and like fixing the tests when they fail, it's a lot easier. Finally, you have your framework there, you are building tests, you have more than 10, 20, 50, 100, so your tests can run in parallel. They are reasonably reliable and they are easy to maintain, but now you have to expose that to the rest of the team. If you are becoming the man in the middle, that when people say like, hey, like, Fernando, staging is ready, and you run the test and you check if everything is fine, and then you say yes, no. First of all, it's not transparent, and that, in my experience, it helped me a lot being transparent, because like basically, if all the results of everything that you build is out there and everybody can see it, if something starts being flaky or hard to like and starts like failing sporadically, it kind of like public shames you, and that makes you improve your framework. And also, you want to remove yourself from the man in the middle. Like, it's okay when you have like 20, 30 tests and you have a team of 20 people, but like at Medallia there were like, when I left, there were like 600 people. And if you are the man in the middle, then like you will have less time to start working on the cool things and building new stuff. So for that...
And you don't get to take time off as well.
Yes, true. So for this, you need reporting. At RelateIQ, we used to have TeamCity that is a continuous integration. So I built an integration that it will start printing on the output whatever TeamCity needs. And that's how I at RelateIQ at the beginning, the Augmented Framework had like reporting, basically relying on TeamCity. That is a great thing. Later, what I wanted to, like the framework to have like a way of reporting. And actually it was the time when I came here to talk to Manor, whatever. And I was telling the idea of like, hey, I want to do this with annotations and start working on a reporting. And he told me like, why would you ever do that? Like there are like tools out there, like look at Allure. And this is the biggest lesson I learned about reporting. And I almost made the same. One of the biggest mistakes that I make at Medallia, it was like, okay, like I build my own reporting, so like it will like alert and put like a flashing red light on some like page, and then it will rerun the test that failed and will show like yellow because like if they were like kind of flaky. and I spent a lot of time there. It was fun to build it, but then I had to maintain it. And then I was not maintaining the framework, but also I was maintaining the stupid reporting tool. I had to, like, whenever like I had to extend it, I had to work on that, and like at the end I was spending like 30, 40, 50% of my time on the tool, and it doesn't make sense because you should be focusing on building things. You're a small team, you want to have a big impact, and you want to focus on building things that help your team, and you don't want to spend time on reporting and all that. So there are lots of tools out there, just don't build your own tool, your own reporting tool. And this one probably will not work, but there are two things that I did for Augmented Driver. One is using Allure, that it was literally like 10 lines of code that I had to add. Allure is an open source tool like maintained from some people from Russia. They are like quite responsive. I talked to them. They always fix the things that I found that were broken. And then the other one that helped me a lot, that it might not be useful for the test itself, but it's useful for like improving your framework and like becoming a better software engineer, is an integration that I did on Slack. So every time something runs, it will like broadcast to Slack all the results. So like whenever I start running something and like somebody wants to see like, hey, is everything fine on staging? Can we push to production? I point him like, hey, look at the Slack channel. And if there are like failures, they say like, hey, like we broke something, let's fix it. And if it was a failure of the test because it was flaky, then like I have like this like public shaming that I have to improve. And that way is the way that I found myself, maybe because that's the way I am, like I don't like being publicly shamed, but that's the way that I, like at RelateIQ, I keep like almost 300 tests, like with a team of like 3 or 4 people, like running continuously in less than 15 minutes.
So one question exactly
Yes.
on that note. I totally agree, you probably don't need to build something that would just generate a simple report for the current results.
Yes.
Because there are a bunch of different free out-of-the-box reporting that you can use. Like JUnit is one that's available on any platform, and it integrates with any CI system. So it would tell you this failed at this time, and these are the tests that failed. And it's very intuitive, and Allure is another one of those. But there are several of those. What are your thoughts on the point that you mentioned about, a test is flaky. Okay, you see that it failed once, but you run it, and then you run it for 20 times, and it works fine. Do you see any value of actually having reporting in a way that gets the results of the tests over a period of time or over a few builds? That would give you the real measure of if your tests are flaky or not.
Yes, absolutely. Like Augmented Driver doesn't have, it has Allure that it gives you like test of what happened. Like if you have like the integration on TeamCity, like you will have all the results, or integration with Jenkins or whatever you want. Yes, definitely.
But those don't give you results about specific tests.
Yes.
It would tell you that these many tests failed, so the graphs on any of those continuous tools are the number of tests, not necessarily which tests.
No, yes. At least on TeamCity, there's a statistic plugin that it will correlate all your tests. So it will say like, hey, this test like failed like 3 times in the last like 50 runs or something.
Okay, that's cool.
So to address that, what usually as part of the development of a new test, especially when somebody else is doing, not like someone that is super familiar with WebDriver, like some developer, some front-end developer that doesn't know Java, what I do is like, thanks to Sauce Labs, so basically there's a way to run like the same test like 100 times. So in TeamCity part 1 one build was like, hey, like give me the test and run it 100 times. So you were not able to merge anything unless the 100 times were green. So that's how like that's one of the process that I built on the developing my new test, especially for like outsiders. That like, hey, you have a new test, that's great, that's awesome that you want to contribute. This is the thing, cd link, just run it 100 times, and if it's not green, like if something fails, I'll sit with you and I'll figure it out what's going on. Same way when I see some test flaky, that because it happens, like I grab it, I run it 100 times on myself and I try to figure it out, like what's going on. So, reporting. So, episode 5.
Derail you.
No, please go on. So for episode 5, let's go the base case. So here you will see something